From South Bend, Indiana, welcome to 3Degrees Discussions. I'm your host, Mike Vasquez. This is a podcast devoted to the stories behind the innovators, entrepreneurs, and leaders in the 3D printing industry.
It's getting them to understand that for prototyping, it can be great. All the different types of prototypes you can make. It looks like prototype. You can make a functional prototype now. But really getting, client, a customer to understand that that's not going to usually translate to most of the time what their product's actually going to be.
That was Steven Szymeczek. Steven is a mechanical engineer with more than 12 years of experience across aerospace, oil and gas, consumer, and medical device industries. His broad areas of expertise include product development, engineering, implementing design for traditional additive manufacturing and 3D printing, as well as workforce development. Before we get started, head over to www.3degreescompany.com and subscribe to the podcast. Remember, you can listen to the show anywhere you download your podcast, including Spotify, Apple, Amazon, or Stitcher. Also, if you or your company are looking for materials, qualification, or general additive manufacturing support, reach out to the team through our website or via email at info@3degreescompany.com. All right, Steven, thanks so much for joining the show today. Excited for the conversation here. Like we do with all our guests, we like to start at the beginning. And so, where were you born? What do you remember about some of those early days in terms of kind of getting interested in working with your hands or doing engineering?
Yeah, so goes back all the way to, when I was pretty young. I grew up in southern Arizona, a place called Sierra Vista, Arizona, pretty close to the Mexico border. And growing up, it was one of those cases where even when I was really young, I like my grandmother's house, find me taking apart stuff, and just an interest of how things worked. I was really interested in aerospace and aircraft, and so I had an early interest in actually wanted to be a pilot too. It was kind of like really early on. And then as I got further along in school, it was kind of still interested, maybe join the Air Force, but I was always interested in doing engineering at some point. And then it was probably right around like senior year, I finally like made a decision. It was good. I had a couple of friends too that all wanted to go into engineering that I grew up with too. So I went to Northern Arizona University. So on the other side, the north side of the state, up in the mountains, and it was a great college, a little bit smaller. It was great because it was smaller class sizes. I got to know the professors a little bit more. And then just being on campus, I slowly started getting involved in ASME, and my senior design was actually in SAE aero design. So just an interest in all things engineering. And right around my senior year too, I also started growing an interest in maybe starting my own company too. And that was a friend from college, a fellow mechanical engineer. His dad had been a consultant before, and he was a civil engineer. But we always talked about too, just trying to find something interesting to work on. In the beginning, the first kind of seeds of us kind of starting a business, and it was called Nothing Better to Do Engineering, something silly like that, just messing around, made a really horrible website. And then right out of that, I actually struggled right after graduation to find like a good job. I started at a small aircraft crop duster company in Flagstaff, and I had worked there part-time just as like a technician, and then I was actually just a technician. I wasn't an engineer for probably like the first 6 months. Looked all around for different types of jobs. They eventually made me into a mechanical engineer at that company in Flagstaff, but I didn't get paid very well. And so I kept looking. My wife, who I'd been dating for a few years in college, finally graduated, and I kind of got lucky, and I landed a job with an aerospace company. It was called BE Aerospace at the time. And then we moved all the way across the country to North Carolina, lived there for about a year, and then transferred back, and they had a site in Tucson, and so called BE Aerospace. And I work mainly aircraft interiors and seating. was kind of the job as a design engineer. So lots of CAD, and I think I've always been interested in 3D modeling. And in college, I wasn't very good. Yeah, I would say I was pretty horrible all the way up through college, and even in my senior design for the aero design that we did for that competition, I didn't do any of the CAD because yeah, I kind of led the team, but yeah, I wasn't good. But I knew I wanted to get better, and so yeah, I landed a job where that's pretty much all day, every day, living in CAD. Started off in Siemens NX, working for BE Aerospace as an aircraft interiors company at the time. That's what it was called. Um, and yeah, I got better at CAD, got better at engineering. I got to go on a few trips to manufacturing sites and got to visit the Boeing facility in Seattle. That was a pretty awesome experience. And I got to actually be on an install for the seating and enclosures that we worked on into a 747.
Not the
And
doors, I hope, right? You-
no, no, every yeah, basically it's just yeah, the 747's painted and basically
yeah.
the interior is just stripped down and all the tracks and everything are exposed. And yeah, you got to go in there and see all the first installs, um, and kind of yeah, work with some people at Boeing. Got to take the factory tour at Boeing too, and that was awesome getting to see all the different sections of the plane getting joined together. And so yeah, I love that job. I think the one thing
And
that kind of started though in college was I liked doing just general product development, and it
yep.
was knowing how to do CAD. I taught myself Fusion 360 too on the side, and this is back when Fusion 360 was pretty new. So I haven't really dated myself at all. But I graduated in 2011 from college, and then I started my side business doing product development services while I was working aircraft interiors in 2014, and that was a busy year too. I had my first kid that year, um, but it was good. Yeah, I started with the friend from college, and we just started working with entrepreneurs in Tucson and Phoenix, Arizona. Um, and so I kind of had both of these loves, I guess. It was kind of splitting some of my free time. I'd go on my lunch and I'd work on side projects, for entrepreneurs and people who wanted to design their own products. And so kind of taught that to myself too and how to interact, with people. And we had our own little side business um and yeah, 3D printing actually didn't come in until probably yeah, right about 2013 for me after I graduated college. I didn't even really know what it was.
And so,
um yeah.
so when you were, one of the things that, go back to the aerospace thread a little bit, do you want to talk more generally about, you mentioned your visit to the Boeing facility and how they were kind of putting everything together, but um, I think what surprised me, you don't really think about it as like the amount of parts and components and different features on each of these aircrafts. They come from usually different companies, right? And so how,
Yeah.
like,
Yep.
do you want to maybe just give kind of like, what's the 101 in terms of like, you have the interiors part that you were working on, but what are some of the broad other categories that kind of go into that? And then how do they each
Yeah.
communicate?
So yeah, you have basically tiered suppliers, like tiered supplier system. And so all the way down from part level to subsystem to like we were seating and enclosures and monuments. So basically it's a subassembly unit. And so we were, the highest tiered supplier that basically installs that unit into the aircraft. But there's, teams for everything, for lavatories, for everything, for interiors, and then of course then you have all the subsystem teams that do exterior things. But yeah, it's fun and like yeah, I don't know the exact count, but you have tens of 20s of different companies all as suppliers to the aircraft, and you're all trying to install things at different times, and it's kind of chaotic to try to to coordinate all that. And usually the plane's never on time. It's always sitting there a little bit longer waiting for somebody either, and there's always some errors or something too when you're trying to install everything on the aircraft. And um, so yeah, like all that and all the bits and pieces that come together from all the way down, to the suppliers. And during my time in interiors, the very first time I got exposed to 3D printing through that was in some of the ducting. So we actually did some SLS, like FR nylon ducting components, and we worked with Stratasys, and then a little bit of 3D printing too through PolyJet doing prototyping at work. And this was all though right about 2013. I started getting interested through work a little bit, and then also on the side I realized that all the FDM printers and everything were becoming more available. And then so yeah, kind of pivoting away, I guess, from the aircraft side. I got to see kind of, you know, from the side of there's these companies coming out that can produce materials that can actually go on aircraft. And so there'd be those lowest tiered suppliers are just giving us the parts, you know, as a higher tiered supplier. We're assembling that, and then we're taking our subassembly and putting that in the aircraft. So yeah, it was a great experience. Like I wanted to do something involving aircraft, and so I got to do that for a while. But yeah, it changed right about 2000, end of 2017, and so that company actually shut down its site in Tucson. And I'd been doing side work with a couple of different companies doing product development. So kind of gave me that opportunity. Then I decided I was going to go out on my own, and I did that, yeah, for a couple of years. Started using multi-jet fusion back then. So like late 2017, 2018, HP multi-jet fusion started becoming more prevalent back then. And yeah, so it was great. I got to kind of go out on my own for a little bit. I created some low volume units using multi-jet fusion for some different sensor companies. And then, yeah, I really fell in love with 3D printing. I had my own printer that I started with, and, you know, doing that frustrating exercise in the garage of, you know, trying not to get it to warp, and dealing with all those fun first days of where all the slicing software and everything didn't quite work how you wanted, and you were always troubleshooting. And it was fun though. Yeah, it was like the first time that I got my own printer, and, you know, I made some little car or something.
What was your first printer?
So it's an Airwolf HDR.
Oh yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
Yeah, and so why did I have that printer? So I actually took a vacation to Costa Mesa, California, where they're based out of, close by, and actually got to see the facility. And so that was kind of my first. I got to see printers making printers and all that fun stuff in the early days where everybody was trying to hype it up as much as they could. And yeah, I fell in, you know, face first into into just wow, you know, it was so cool to see these new companies kind of making these 3D printers. And yeah, so I think my shift that happened from like my love of like wanting to do aircraft stuff, I was just so engaged and like wanted to be in 3D printing because of that CAD experience that I had and being able to create things and prototype things, and then eventually, yeah, making end use parts. That whole process just has captured my attention, my imagination since then. And then yeah, I've tried my best since then too, yeah, to start spreading the word as much as I can, because as much as 3D printed additive is out there, I've always been interested in educating people about what it is, what it can do. And I love that sharing that same moment that I first had, I think, over and over again with other people when they first realize like, wow, you know, I know a little bit of CAD, I can go in, create something, like I can create a prototype, you know, I can make something appear, you know, that before in the mindset of, you know, you're kind of slowly waiting for something to be created by some other company, having your own printer and being able to realize, you know, your designs in this kind of rapid way. Yeah, never have gone back. And so kind of timeline now, I guess. Yeah. So just up till now. So my company, Penumbra Engineering, we were working with Athena 3D Manufacturing. So they were an HP Multi-Jet Fusion Service Bureau in Phoenix. Got to know the owner, and so we actually merged our services, so product development, engineering, design services, with Athena. And then yeah, so we had kind of a company that could do printing and do engineering services. And so that was great. It was a great experience. Started adding more printers, and during COVID, we printed a whole bunch of mask frames, and we're kind of part of that too. Continually worked with product development companies, and yeah, it was great. It was great to be part of a little bit bigger company. Eventually, yeah, we had kind of ups and downs with things. I kind of left for a little while. I worked for Link 3D actually for a little while doing MES, and I came back. Eventually, yeah, was laid off from that company, unfortunately, after some different things shifted around. Another company came in, and uh, landed myself back in product development here in Boise, Idaho. So kind of that transition, I actually worked remote um, from Boise, Idaho, uh, flying back and forth to Phoenix, Arizona. And that was the reason during COVID. Yeah, I being close to my wife's family, so it was a lot kind of flying back and forth at that time. And then yeah, I worked about a year for a product development services company here. Um, and then now I just ended that job and I'm transitioning into something else. So lots of changes and shifts, but all those have been good things. And during that time, as I mentioned, my educational side of me, because I'm not busy enough, I decided to start a nonprofit. We're actually coming up on almost 2 years when we started initially, but yeah, workforce development nonprofit, 3D printing mentality, and so been engaged with that, on and off, but more at times, and yeah, that's that side of, like I mentioned, the aha moment, and a lot of universities still don't even have access. More and more do now, but a lot of them don't know, past FDM, like what actually exists. So that was going here locally to Boise State University a little over 2 years ago, and kind of did a presentation. And yeah, just seeing the students and all the questions that they had, and it just brought all that back to me again of back in 2013 when I was fascinated, and as an engineering student, engineering background, everybody usually does CAD, and they get a good basis for design and engineering, and then 3D printing kind of goes on top of that. And once you combine all those together, and the aha moment happens that you can use 3D printing and you can use additive manufacturing, that's something that I realized I wanted to be involved with as much as possible. So,
And so as you were doing all these product design projects and working with a couple different companies, where were you seeing the use cases for what people were asking you, and maybe where you were pushing people towards knowing what you know about the technology?
yeah, so I think I kind of had an infatuation with 3D printing. So I think in the beginning, yeah, it was always trying to convince people that you could do things with 3D printing at first, because it was kind of voodoo, magic to the entrepreneurs that I worked with. And yeah, some of the first products, you kind of talked about it like, well, this might not be as strong, as you think it is. And then you have those first couple of prototypes where they just break, within like 20 minutes of use. So I think early on, it's perception. It's still perception, especially, if people aren't really familiar with what it is. People know, you go buy a printer now from a store, 3D printer. But I think it's getting them to understand that for prototyping, it can be great. All the different types of prototypes you can make. It looks like prototype. You can make a functional prototype now. But really getting, client, a customer to understand that that's not going to usually translate to most of the time what their product's actually going to be. So I've talked all about 3D printing, but a big focus, and I've gotten more and more into this, is comparing additive and traditional, and really getting people to understand that the things that they buy off of Amazon, the plastic injection molded parts, and 3D printing, they're getting closer to doing, prototypes that can translate over, but getting everybody to understand the differences and the nuances between traditional and additive. And so that was probably first half of the battle usually in product development is aligning expectations.
Yeah.
And worked with all different kinds of people, to individual entrepreneurs, designing toys, to sensor companies, to people doing firearms, to all sorts of people over the different product development, roles that I've had. And there's usually 3D printing always somewhere in there. You're prototyping something. And then, yeah, sometimes it happens, I think, a little bit more now, because they actually think about it from the beginning. And I've had even transition away from my own company. People see like the Adidas Futurecraft shoes, and they start getting ideas in their head that, they can do it. They're not Adidas. So that's another one, is getting people to realize that it takes a lot of investment into working your way up to having your own 3D printed product line, and what that actually entails. And uh, everybody thinks it's going to be cheaper, but in the beginning, it's probably way more expensive in lots of different ways. So,
And going back to the workforce piece, what besides kind of introducing people to the technology, do you have other goals with in terms of introducing them to jobs in the field, or what do you see as kind of the net result of kind of getting people skilled up in some of these technologies?
yeah, so I think something that I've always seen, since the beginning, since I started with 3D printing, is, yeah, you see some of those first end use parts, like in aircraft interiors. You see the ducting, and then the wheels start turning, and you start thinking about how this can actually infiltrate into actual manufacturing for all different industries. And I think it's becoming more and more prevalent, especially in aerospace, biomedical. So I think, yeah, for like the nonprofit work that we do in the workforce development, we've been pretty heavily starting to focus in aerospace and biomedical, because those are the two areas. You have O&P, you have orthopedic implants, you have on the aerospace side, you have everything involved with the rocket side of things. Everybody's switching over to using just additive for lots of different components, and so really it's getting students to realize that there are these industries, these different technologies that are they're going to become the thing that is used, and aligning skill sets kind of towards where things are going. So yeah, a big one that I've kind of latched onto is and topology is like an example of software that, when we're going through our programs, it's great for somebody to actually work through a process of, how a file is translated from a base CAD through optimization, and then looping back through analysis. And so from an engineering standpoint, that ties in really well to, what they're learning, and then actually bridging that gap between the base engineering skills, and you're kind of learning programming, process development, all of these things that as you get into aerospace biomed, they're so process heavy. They're so dependent on inputs and outputs. And on top of that, you need to learn the technologies too, and additive, what it can do, the restrictions. And once you can apply at least base level, through like a senior design, you can put all those pieces together. More and more students will start to go into more additive centric roles, being exposed to it in college, and when you can actually see, what you can produce. I think, yeah, it changes a lot of mindset, because most students, I would say, 75% to 90% of students, they just need a job. They're just, yeah,
Yeah.
I want to get a job. Just please, yeah, let me get a job when I graduate. I was in the same spot, I just want to get a job. I wanted something in aerospace. But if I had known back then, that there was this new technology that could enable me to get these really interesting and powerful careers, where you're taking, complex geometries, you're implementing them, in cooling ducts and heat exchangers, and on the O&P side, you're able to go in and create these unique geometries that form somebody's body, and you're able to do it, quicker, and in a lot of cases, better performing parts, and then on the flip side, yeah, for the biomed, um, is being able to create these structures for osseointegration and this things like that. Those skill sets is as we've kind of built up the nonprofit, um, bringing in people too, because I'm aerospace background, but bringing in biomed subject matter experts, bringing in people from O&P, getting all the elements together, to really accentuate, these are the types of people, these are the careers, and then yeah, actually helping facilitate people get jobs too, and
And
people that are already working in additive,
right.
like helping these students go through a program, they learn their skills, they already have something on their resume, and then helping place them more directly into additive jobs. So
And what's the environment like there in Idaho in
yeah, and
terms
it's yeah,
of types of
Idaho,
companies or types of
yeah,
manufacturing going on?
and it's kind of, I would call it, I don't know how many years back from like where I came from in Arizona. Arizona, there's a lot of aerospace. There's a lot of companies doing additive. It's in the university. Um, over here, I would call it a little bit back from that. They're very focused in traditional manufacturing still. The main industry is food, agribusiness, still in Idaho. Um, but yeah, slowly that's starting to infiltrate into like the jigs and fixtures and the things that go with aiding traditional manufacturing. But then yeah, you have kind of random companies here too. You have there's print farms here, and then the university is starting to build up um, slowly their additive capabilities. They have a fleet of FDM printers, but they're looking into other things. And I would say, yeah, it's kind of like bad and good at the same time. it's it's bad that they still don't have access to enough things probably locally, but good for me because I love coming in and kind of letting people know like what's out there, and it's that same thing I mentioned. It's when you're spreading that knowledge, and even if they're not going to stay in state, an example is one of the senior designers we supported. Yeah, he moved to Ohio, but now he's working biomed, doing implants. But he would have never even known probably that existed if we hadn't gone in and exposed him to the program, helped sponsor their senior design, work more close with him, brought in people from you know that industry, and kind of recognizing too that they have a mechanical engineering program here. They have biomed minors too, is actually the program that they have alongside mechanical here. Uh, so really trying to understand, what the university is offering and how does that line up with where they could go if they wanted to go into an additive manufacturing career.
Awesome.
So yeah.
So looking forward into 2024, what's on your radar? We've talked about AMUG, so I know you're involved in
Yeah, I
AMUG, but
know.
what else
Yeah.
is
I had to
talk
wear
about
it a
that?
little
Oh
bit.
yeah, yeah, you got the brand
Yeah. And
happening.
so I didn't mention it. Yeah, another volunteer thing. And it's funny, I've only been to AMUG a couple of times, but I've known enough people in the AMUG community. And so they kind of pulled me in, and I've been my second year as the track lead for software track for AMUG. This year I'm a co-track lead, and I have David Johnson from HP 3D Printing's the other co-track lead. But yeah, it's great. You get to be a crucial part of the conference, and we get to basically bring in speakers for the entire software track, the user side of the software track. And yeah, just getting to meet people through that. I was an MES for a little while. I've been heavily in the design side. And so design for additive manufacturing, I think they kind of noticed that I was pretty into that, and bringing that more into the conference too is kind of something we've tried to get more talks, um, people using technologies or software like Topology, and actually showing workflows and what they're doing. And then this year, yeah, it's looking pretty good. We had a workshop last year design tools workshop. So we heavily focused in, scanning, um, manipulating CAD, optimizing, and then understanding, what materials and things you could use in more of an interactive kind of workshop. We're kind of outside the hands-on workshops, but it was amazing last year. It was on the last day and got, I don't know, it was 50 to 60 people, I think, attended. So AMUG's great. There's many different types of people, and a lot of people are looking more for like DFAM, type talks. And this year, yeah, it's kind of the same. We have similar speakers, a little bit different. Uh, and David Johnson, yeah, we're trying to focus a lot too on like O&P side of things, and bringing that a little bit into the conference. And just because it's such a great use case, and physically bringing somebody there and scanning, and so that should be a pretty cool workshop. Should be on the last day again. It might be a different day, but yeah. So if you're at AMUG, any of the user side software track stuff, pretty excited for. And if you're around, yeah, hope to see you at one. And yeah, so AMUG, that volunteer side of me, and then um, leading up till now, we're in January 10th. Yeah, it's a new year, and so this year I think the goals for me is I'm kind of transitioning into something new too. I'm pretty heavily involved, at least the first part of this month, into kind of pushing our nonprofit forward. There's some programs and things that we're looking to try to launch. Um, right now, we support a couple different senior design teams, both at Boise State University, Arizona State University. Um, we have a K through 12 program. We're trying to bring back up a 3D printed Lego keychain project where they work through like Tinkercad, and then they go and 3D print their own custom keychain. And so that's another project that we're trying to push again this year. Um, the Impossible Airplane project is another one that kind of came to us that I'm hoping we'll get more involved with this year too. But it's Jessica Cox, the first armless woman pilot. So she's from Arizona, and she's trying to build the first foot-controlled airplane off of a kit. And so that project, yeah, we're trying to support more so we can actually build some of the like kind of the interface with the controls and things, and maybe use some additive in that. And so we'll see that we might roll that into a senior design and try to see how much support we can get for that this year. And then the other one that I've just started and trying to get off the ground, a little bit more involved with, is something called Innovatathon. So kind of through a partner, another nonprofit, Education to Success, they kind of launched this program called Innovatathon. It was kind of created at the University of Arizona, but basically a corporate company comes in, they sponsor, they usually do like 12 to 15 students over a period of like 15, 16 hours, where they give a project, an idea, and they work through that over that amount of time. And then some of the money that goes into the corporate sponsorship, they actually get as a scholarship and a stipend too at the end of it. It's one of those like win-win type programs. So I'm hoping to be a part of those more this year. We're trying to go out and gain more support for corporate sponsors, get more universities interested. But yeah, kind of an extension of what we're already doing with senior design, enabling students to get those experiences, actually get to potentially be semi-interviewed too in the process by a potential company they might work for too, and then also getting some money out of it. And so yeah, trying to promote that a little bit more this year. It's a cool program. Hoping maybe to do one at Boise State University and looking to kind of grow and expand it. And yeah, I'm kind of excited for where that could go. And I think that kind of covers it, yeah, for this year. I'm sure lots of other things will happen, but yeah, and I think too when we had talked before too, kind of the work that you've done in Chicago and kind of the outreach, working with America Makes, Um, Myself, kind of my goal this year is to all the organizations that are out there doing good, promoting K through 12, promoting, early career individuals, really getting out there and collaborating and being a part of the greater community that wants to do good. And I know you're one of those people also that, especially the Chicago underserved areas too, getting out there, getting them familiar with what additive is, exciting careers they can go into. So,
Awesome. So last
yeah.
question. Any book or recommended reads that you would made an impact on your
Oh,
career, or
yeah.
something that you'd like to
So
share with the audience?
there's always the fun ones. One of the I can't remember how old it is. I think it's about 2012 or so. It's called Fabricated: The New World of 3D Printing. It's a little bit older now, but it's one of those ones where um, kind of got a lot of things in my head. It goes through like 3D printed organs to all sorts of things. And this was 10 plus years ago now that it came out. Some of the things have come true in it. Some of the things maybe necessarily not. But that's a great one.
Okay.
It's a good um, like the other more boring ones are like the 3D printed handbook, that 3D Hubs came out with. Um, and then I think too, okay, I'm looking through my library. There's always good ones. I'm kind of interested in a lot of other strange things too, like math art and things that you can create with additive mathematically. There's a book called Math Art, so you can look it up and talks about like how you can create things with the Pythagorean theorem and all sorts of interesting mathematical formulas to create shapes. And so that's something interesting. One that I have not got through, maybe you've read it, is metal additive manufacturing for propulsion applications. I think it
Oh,
came
by
out like,
Paul.
yeah, by Paul Pogradle, NASA. I think I've maybe gotten like, I don't know, a third of the way. It's pretty, like, it's good. It's got a lot of great information. I'm not as heavy on the metal side, so I always try to find, something that takes me a little bit longer to digest. And but yeah, so that's a great one too. So
Right on. Well,
yeah.
thanks so much. Good luck with the first part of the year, and we'll see you at AMUG.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, it was great. Thanks.